parents and staff and neighbors who are here. Thank you for taking time out. I know when it's a gorgeous night, it's harder to give up the time than it was last night. I was hoping we had the weather last night tonight, because then I think we'd have more people. But I'm excited that we have all of you, because you're the ones who really care about us. At this time, I'd like to introduce our wonderful leader, Lane Larson.
I'm thinking we're going to need the mic tonight, aren't we, to get the noise. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's just a privilege to be with you tonight and to talk about Harrison Elementary and what the future for our district is. And so it's extremely exciting, and I'm honored to be here on behalf of the school district. At this time, I want to introduce some very special people tonight that have come, that have been a huge part in making this a success. And so I want to introduce Steve Lund, our business manager, who will be doing the first part of the presentation with me. I also have board members. I have Sue Kern right over here. So, we also have several people here from Foster, Jacobson, Johnson, who have been helping to lead this charge. And in the back, I have Kevin Warmo, and I have Eric Kaiser and his wife, Amy. And I also want to take this time today to introduce Erica Markison with Woodsett Smith and Knowlton. They've been working just diligently along with FJJ and Crow Sanderson to help us have these listening sessions and to hear from the public. And so with that, welcome. Thank you so much for coming, and we just really are happy to have this wonderful turnout here tonight. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Steve Lund, and he's going to talk a little bit about where the district has been the last 2 years, and as far as the comprehensive long-range facility planning. And then when Steve's done, I'm going to take over from there, and we're going to talk a little bit about what our hopes and dreams are as we move forward with the school district. So once again, thank you everyone for being here.
I can't stand still, so I'm going to have to move around a little bit. As Lane mentioned, I'm Steve Lund, I'm the Director of Business Services. If you haven't met me, please stop in Washington and stop in the business office anytime you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the past couple of years. We've been busy at work. It's been a lot of work behind the scenes. I think you're going to find the process moving forward is going to take a little bit more public approach to it, but the work that we've been doing over the past couple of years has been very important. I hope you find it a little bit insightful. So let's talk about, tonight we're going to talk about where we've been. That's kind of my part over the past 2 years. And then, like Lane mentioned, she's going to kind of take it from here and talk about the process as we move forward, okay? So let's first ask ourselves, well, why are we doing this? Why are we here? Let's not forget that the center of this, just like at the center of the entire school organization, are students. And we can't forget that this is a student-centered process. So we want to make sure that it remains focused on the students, even though we're going to talk a lot about buildings, and I get to talk about statistics, which I like. At the center of all this continues to be students. But most importantly, why we're here tonight is we want to share a lot of information with you, everything that we know up to this point, okay? And more importantly from there, we want to gather feedback from you. We want to gather feedback not only about the district, get your perspective about the school district, but more importantly, Harrison. And that's why we're here tonight, is to learn and get feedback from Harrison specifically, okay? So as we go back in time, I mean, travel back nearly 2 years we've been at some of this work that we've been doing behind the scenes. We did a lot of information gathering in this first part of the process, okay? So we gathered information about demographics and enrollment. We wanted to know exactly where we've been with enrollment relative to where we can expect to be with enrollment in the next 10 years. We don't want to go much further beyond that because it gets really difficult to predict beyond 10 years. We want to focus on what we can expect over the next decade. And then we predict enrollment every year as we start new school years and try to best design a budget to operate each year. But this work that was done by the work was completed by the former state demographer, Hazel Reinhardt. she looked at our enrollments through a greater or broader lens than what we would traditionally do. Well, we look at a lot of historical information relative to where students come from and where we can expect them to go in the future until they graduate. She folded in information that we typically or traditionally won't look at, housing starts and things such as that take a little bit broader approach. What it did do for us, though, is it validated a lot of the information that we use and the methods that we use to project our enrollment are solid, okay? It took that enrollment, not only what we have right now, but what we can anticipate in the future, to fold it into the capacity of our schools, okay? So how many students that we could appropriately put in each one of our school buildings. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Over the course of the entire summer, we had engineers scour through our buildings, from basements to roofs, and they inventoried everything that we should be paying attention to within the foreseeable future relative to things that will require future maintenance. And we'll talk about what those things would be. Lastly, as we begin to start to formalize some ways in which to address the scope of concerns and issues that we have out there, we want to know what kind of financial capacity we would have. You know, as we start to put and start to shape plans, we went through a detailed financial analysis of the capacity the school district has to borrow money. Okay, we won't touch on much of that tonight, but we have shared some of that in the past, and we will consider that going forward as well. So let's talk about enrollment. When we looked at enrollment, and there again, the work that Hazel Reinhardt did in her demographic study really validated a lot of the work that we do to project our enrollment each year. And she really came up through her work, came up with 3 different scenarios, kind of a low, medium, and high, if you will. And when she did that work, the starting point at that time was 2015, in which we had about 6,436 students, okay, K-12. And as she traveled that through the next decade and projected it to the year 2025, she came up with 3 scenarios. But if you look at them, you can see that that growth isn't necessarily insurmountable. We traveled from 6,436 to about 6,700 with the low. Medium goes to about 6,900, a little over 7,100 on the top range. Okay, but when you break that down over that, keep in mind that's over the next 10 years. When you break that down, for example, the low is actually less than 0.5% per year for the next 10 years. So I think what we're working with here is something that's certainly going to be manageable as we look to the future. When we've done a lot of our planning up to this point and thought processes, we have used kind of that middle growth range. And if you look at where we've traveled, even since 2015, we're following that trajectory of that middle growth estimate. So when you take that growth for the student enrollment and you start to fold it into the capacities that we have in our school buildings right now, you can see on the elementary level, we have current students of about 2,475, not quite 2,500 K-4 students in the 6 elementary schools that we have across the district. When we look at capacity from a school perspective, not only do we look at things such as how many square feet per student, kind of that broad range of measurement, but we also look at the appropriateness of the size of areas like the one we're in. Gymnasiums, media centers, cafeterias, and perhaps even playgrounds. And we look at how many students can those core spaces support, regardless of how many students we perhaps have in an elementary school. And if you look at it, our current capacity right now across 6 elementary schools, based on all of those factors, is less than 2,200. So even right now, based on 2,475, not even looking out 10 years into the future, you can see that we do have some capacity issues that we better be paying attention to in our school buildings right now. And if you've been in the schools, and you certainly have been, you can kind of feel that. And we'll go through a little bit of that tonight as we travel further into the presentation. At the middle level and at the high school level, from a capacity standpoint only, we're sitting fine. We've got capacity built in at the middle school to handle up to about 2,200 students. And again, at the medium range, even going up to the high growth range of 2,200, we should be sitting okay. At the high school, while we have other things through educational adequacy that we probably need to address from a capacity standpoint only, we're sitting okay at the high school. So So let's talk about that elementary school space. We talked about it being tight, and you can see from our capacity standpoint, and you can actually see it just in this school. So for example, in Harrison, we've taken areas that have been formerly shower rooms, and we've made instructional spaces out of them. We've taken spaces that have been storage closets, and we've made individualized learning areas out of them. That means that storage now has to happen where the boilers are, and also in the hallways. And through this, we've actually created spaces within spaces to try to see how much we can build the capacity with what we have. And even planning for next year, as we look at adding an additional classroom here to keep our class sizes low, we're looking at adding additional space on the stage behind you. So when you look at Harrison, for example, Harrison is designed from a capacity standpoint, the core spaces in the classrooms that we have to be a two-section elementary school, basically two of everything, K through 4. We're planning next year with the additional classroom, this school will be one classroom short of a full 3-section school. So when you look at that elementary space comparison, just that broad level basis, and you say, well, how does that compare when we compare to other districts? Okay, and we use these districts quite often in a lot of our comparisons. You'll see that there are districts that are in our Central Lakes Conference, so we compete with these districts on the football field as well as the basketball court. But we also compare a lot to these districts because they're in communities that look like ours. They're districts about our size. So when you look at how we stack on amount of square feet per student, that broad measurement in our elementary schools, you can see that we're right at the bottom there. We're tight. And so is Bemidji. We're bookended between Bemidji and Moorhead. So what are they doing in Bemidji right now? And what are they doing in Moorhead right now? These are things that school districts look at, not uncommon, and what we should also be paying attention to, just from that broad level of range. So let's talk a little bit about our school district, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into the conditions of our school. Okay, so when we look at our school district, we're one of 336 school districts across the state, but we're one of the largest school districts relative to student population outside of the 7-county metro area. In fact, we're the 5th largest outside of the Twin Cities area. We're 516 square miles, 12 facilities. We care for about 1.2 million square feet of buildings, and we're on about a half section of ground. So when you look at the average age of our facilities, and you compare all of the age ranges that we have, we travel from our oldest facility, which is just right down the street here, home of Turnstrom Auditorium, which was constructed in 1929. It's nearing that century mark, okay? And you can travel all the way down to our newest facility, which is clearly Forestview Elementary, but that's starting to be it's nearing 15 years of age. But what's interesting to look at when you pull these together on a trend like this, you can see that as a community, over time, we have folded in new facilities about every 10 to 15 years. You can see those gradual steps. With the exception of when they constructed the new high school in 1968, we decided to take a 35-year pause. We can't wait we can't have replacement cycles of 35 years. Even if we stayed on a 10-year replacement cycle with 12 buildings, by the time you got back to the first building that was constructed, it would be 120 years old. So can you imagine what that replacement cycle looks like if we continue to stay on those 35-year pauses? But how do we compare? There again, when we look at those same school districts that are in our conference, how do our age of our buildings compare our average age to those districts? And as you can see, we're at the top, very close to Wilmer, but also those are districts that we compare ourselves to. But we also have to remember, what do the districts that we compete with look like relative to our average age of facilities? But when you look at that, clearly there are school districts that operate with average ages close to us, being Wilmer. Well, what are they doing in Wilmer right now? There again, school districts pay attention to the very same thing and do the very same work that we've been doing for the past 2 years. So let's talk a little bit about future maintenance. I talked about a group of engineers coming in, spent an entire summer going from the basements of our buildings all the way to the roofs. And they gathered up all those items that they identify are going to require future maintenance within the foreseeable future. They're going to be things that are reaching the end of their useful life. that are going to require renewal in the next few years. They're going to include deficiencies that we haven't, as a district, with operational funds that we have for capital expenditures each year, been able to address. Things such as secured entrance points in our buildings, or even ADA accessibility in this very building that we're sitting in tonight. They're going to include things such as tuck pointing and roofs, boilers. We have a sea of parking lots, over 1 million square feet of parking lots that we need to care for, and things such as windows. So when you look at the work that they completed, they identified all the items, and then they put a rough order of magnitude cost on those, a cost estimate, if you will, that really tallied all of the future maintenance across all 12 buildings to be not quite $90 million, okay, that we need to start planning for. Now, that $90 million is spread across all 12 facilities, and not surprising, the newest facility, Forest View, only has about $1 million hanging out there. While the oldest facility, which is just down the street, has about $20 million. Now, that's really important to look at in terms of the total dollar amount. But when you look at the size of the facilities and compare that total dollar amount against the size or the square feet of the facility, you can see something start to materialize just a little bit different. So, for example, $20 million is the largest total amount, but Washington School is, or the Washington building is about 140,000 square feet. So when you divide that out, it tends to be right around in the middle. But when you take, for example, $9 million on Harrison School, which is about 33,000 square feet through that division, it comes out to be about 250. Now, what you need to pay attention to when you look at that number is you start to compare that to what perhaps is your replacement cost. And you start to think strategically about the decisions that we need to make with investing into the schools. That isn't the only thing that you want to look at, but it certainly is one of those. So after we gathered all this information, we began developing solutions and discovering opportunities that exist. We can't diminish the fact that we have $90 million of future maintenance that we identified. But within the solutions to address that also exist opportunities. And those opportunities can include, essentially right-sizing our schools so that we have the appropriate number of students in them. They're going to have strategies such as renewal into our buildings, reinvestment into them, repurpose, or perhaps recreate some of those through replacement. But at the end of the day, it's about the buildings in which we serve our students. We can't forget that. So I talked about where we've been. It's Lane's opportunity to take it from here now and tell you about where we're headed.
Thank you, Steve. Just a little bit. So I'm going to begin, as all of you know, I came here approximately 9 months ago, and one of the exciting pieces that the district showcased for me when I arrived is the fact of all of the work that's been done just to get us to this point, to look at what an overview of all of our district facilities look like. If we were looking at it, I like to think of it as an umbrella, where we've looked at what we would need from all 12 facilities. But now what we need to do, and the board has asked our team to move forward with, and that is to look at what are the priorities. What are the items in each of the buildings that must be done to ensure the educational adequacy for all of our students? What are the items that we should do to take care of our facilities and have them ready for our learners in this 21st century? And what are some of the other items that are available that we want to think about as our students, as our school district moves forward? So one of the things that we did right away when I came is we talked about what is our overall objective. We know that putting the education of our children is at the forefront of all of our decision making when we're making the decisions at the board level and at an administrative level. But when it comes to facilities, we're looking at facilities that promote the opportunities, the innovation and the success that we talk about with our tagline for the school district. And so we talked that there are really 8 things that we want to prioritize and to focus on as we move forward. The first one is the safety and security of all of our buildings. We want to ensure every day that when our children arrive and our employees arrive at work and our volunteers and our guests come to the school district, that parents feel that their children are safe and that they're secure in each of the facilities. We also want to address the mechanical and the educational adequacy pieces that Steve talked about, with the roofs, the windows, some of the HVAC systems, the mechanical pieces that we need to ensure that our facilities are at their capacity. We also want to have the space that fosters the best practice instruction and the 21st century learning opportunities. We talked a lot about the fact that our schools, particularly our elementary schools, we just have such a huge amount of kids that are coming into our buildings, and we could not be more excited for that. And so we want to ensure that the space that we have is adequate for each of the children, and we also want to ensure that as we move forward in this 21st century, that we're providing the spaces and the opportunities necessary so that our kids can be successful in their future. The fourth bullet point here is to also ensure that the spaces promote robust opportunities for the 4 A's: academics, arts, athletics, and activities. Looking at all of the spaces that we have in our district to ensure that they are adequate. The next bullet talks about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I know also to the board, and that's talking about collaboration, ownership, and workforce development. One of the things we talk a lot about, particularly at the high school level, but also at the middle school level, is how are we partnering as a community? How are we partnering with our college to ensure that we are developing the workforce of the future, and that our kids have the skills that they need to continue to move the Brainerd Lakes area forward in the future. And so we want to make sure that we're developing those partnerships with everyone within the community. And it's fun to see city council people here as well tonight, because this is all about collaboration. One of the things I shared last night is, I always tell my children the fact that if we're going to try to tackle something all by ourselves, we're going to probably have less success than if we partner and we work together and we build partnerships as we move forward, so that we move forward together. And so once again, I couldn't thank you more for being here tonight and helping to be a part of this partnership, so that we can develop strategies for moving forward in our school district. The next bullet talks about visionary technology integration. And we know that the children that we have going through our school district right now are being raised in a very highly global society. And we want to make sure that our kids are competitive with all of the other kids that they'll be competitive with. The next one is transparency, engagement, and community trust building. Essential. We need to trust one another. We want to come out and communicate with you personally like this. We also want to have opportunities to communicate with the entire community so that you get your questions answered, so that we're developing that trust, and we're being honest with you when you have questions that we can address. And our intention is to always do it in a very timely and rapid rate. And lastly, but certainly not least, to ensure that the highest quality educational opportunities are provided for our taxpayers' generous investments. We clearly understand that any time you look at any kind of a bond referendum within a school district, when people support that referendum, that it is a sincere and generous investment. And we just really want to ensure that we thank you for your unending commitment to our school district, and thank you for your partnership with us. So as we move forward with these 8 objectives, let's talk about how we're going to do these, how we're going to meet them. When I came in July, one of the things the board said is, we've done this awesome comprehensive long-range planning process. Now, can you help join the team? We have this awesome team established. How can we move forward together and really know what it is the priorities are that we need for our school district. And so I believe it was at the November meeting of the Board of Education, I brought forward something called a 6-phase process for meeting the needs of the school district with our facilities. The first phase is the comprehensive district communications plan, and I'll go through each of these individually. The second one is stakeholder engagement. The third one is to look at potential surveys and assessments. Phase 4 is to develop project scope options and alternatives. The 5th phase is looking at a bond referendum election process, and phase 6 would be the comprehensive construction management services. So I want to take each of those individually with you today. Phase 1, the communications planning. We all know that it's just essential to have strong communications to ensure that we are communicating with our public and giving the honest and transparent answers that people need to their questions. We always want to make sure that when we're communicating that we're keeping our children's educational achievement at the forefront of our decision making, and we want to provide residents with the information that they need to evaluate once a bond referendum comes forward. At the bottom of this screen, you're going to notice something called Blueprint 181. And it says investing, growing, and leading. When we were coming up with a website for the school district, we wanted it to reflect what we're thinking about as we move forward with our building project. And our communications team, and many of those members are sitting towards the back tonight, are here to talk about a comprehensive communications plan, both with our local newspaper, the Brainerd Dispatch, with our radio stations in town, with many of our traditional types of communications, but also with using the internet. And so our communications team developed this logo called Blueprint181.org, which is a website where every piece of information that we develop regarding the facility projects, question and answer opportunities, all of that information is on the website. So if you have questions, you can go to that website and get the information that you're looking for, or at any time call us as well. We'd love to visit with you about it. The second phase is the phase that we're in tonight, and the part that's near and dear to my heart. And what that is the active listening sessions. Earlier this spring, FJJ and Woodsett Smith Knowlton helped lead us through internal listening sessions with our staff. They met with about 44 different groups within our school district, people that represent the teachers, administrators, support staff, and students, to talk about what the strengths of their work environment is, the learning environment in each of the schools. And all kinds of information was collected doing an educational adequacy listening session with these teams. And also the listening session that you're going to do here in just a little bit. They've collected that information, and now they're coming back to the staffs again with the information, with the answers that people had recommended when they went through the listening session. And they're reporting back all of the information that they have. The next area that we're working on tonight is such an exciting part, and it's when we get to come into the community and talk with each of you about what you believe is wonderful about the school district, what we can improve on in the school district. And tonight we get to look a little bit closer at Harrison Elementary. What do you see as the strengths of this wonderful facility and this educational environment? And what do you see are some of the challenges that are brought forth before the school district? We're going to be doing this at 9 of our 12 schools, and we're going to also be having many meetings with the Chamber of Commerce and with different organizations and civic organizations throughout the community to hear your thoughts as we move forward. And then next fall, we'll be coming back again to report some of the findings that we got from these listening sessions. The next phase is to review and to look at stakeholder input. The board is going to have an opportunity to possibly look at a number of assessments and surveys to get even further information from the public. There's such items as doing surveys by telephone where we can call and ask approximately 30 to 40 questions about how people feel about the school district. There's other demographic types of surveys. There's public polling. There's analysis of voter profiles. There's review of the demographic studies, again, for each of our areas. As you can tell in this sheet, there's even something called GIS survey mapping and student mapping, where we can do GIS studies to see where are the children within our school district. Where are the growth areas? Where are some of the areas maybe where there's less growth as far as student enrollment in the future? During this period of time, we're also going to have a very detailed analysis of the financial opportunities within the district, different funding streams, and different ways that we can approach some of the needs that we have within our district. All of these surveys and assessments are possibilities, but it'll be up to the Board of Education to decide which of these different surveys and assessments they would like to look into to get further information so that they can make the best decision. Phase 4 is the development of options and alternatives. And if you work from the bottom, you can see that all of the work that the administrative team is doing with Smith-Knowlton, Foster, Jacobson, Johnson, and Krauss-Anderson will go to the facility committee with recommendations that go right to the Board of Education. The Board of Education then will take all of the information that we've collected in the first 3 phases. The communications phases, the listening sessions with our staff, the listening sessions at each of these meetings, and some of the surveys and assessments to collect all of the data so that they can make the best decision for the school district. One of the things I get asked very often, in fact we got asked it last night when we were at Riverside as well, and that is, have you already made a decision on what we're going to do? What's going to happen? The answer is no. We have not made the decision. The board has not made any decisions as far as what's going to happen with any of the facilities in our district. What they're doing right now is they're collecting information. We want to hear from each and every one of you about what you believe we should be doing as we move forward with the district. And so they'll be collecting all that information and making a decision. And then what they'll do is, once they made the decision, we will move towards a bond election process. Another question we get asked quite often is, when do you foresee that the bond election process will take place? The answer there too is we don't know for sure. All we know is that most likely we'll be able to collect the information from phases 1, 2, and 3 sometime next fall, so the board can make a decision on when we go out to the voters, if we go out to the voters, what does our plan look like? What is the best plan for our school district as we move forward? They're going to also be able to look at some of the options, some of the tax impact that it would have, and to hear from the public so that they make the decision that is best for the district. At that time, we'll be moving into phase 5, which is the bond referendum process. In phase 5, we'll be developing, once the board's made the decision, we'll be developing a review and comment for the Minnesota Department of Education. We'll be developing what the question or questions on a ballot might look like. Will it be 1 question? Will it be 3 questions? We don't know yet. They'll be developing the timeline. What does it look like? When would be the best time for us to ask our voters to come and support our schools? And what does that project look like? So we've got a lot of decisions to make within the next year, or within the time frame that the board will have these decisions. But meetings like tonight are going to help them to put together the right plan and the right proposal to go to the public. And so, the first 5 phases that I've talked about so far are the 5 phases that when we put together an RFQ in December, a request for quote, asking for services to help us, We had just an outstanding response from Foster Jacobson Johnson, Woodsett Smith and Nolting from right here in town, and also from Kraus Anderson. They collaborated and partnered together to help guide us through these 5 steps. And this is what the board has agreed to thus far, that they'll help us to get us to that point where we go to the voters. And then if we do go to the voters and are fortunate to pass a referendum, then we'll go into phase 6, which is the construction management and what the future will look like for the building projects for our school district. So tonight is such an exciting night. It's so much fun, like I said earlier, to have so many of you here to talk about where we've been so far and what our process is going to be as we move forward. And now what I want to do is I want to be able to turn this over to Eric Kaiser with FJJ, and he's going to lead you through a listening session where we can gain input from you to help to guide the process as we move forward and think about all the great attributes that Harrison has. So once again, thank you very much, and we just look forward to hearing from you now as you answer some of the fun questions that are asked. So,
thank you. You like your cookie break? Coffee?
Please go, Teresa made them just for you. I did not make them, you can eat them.
You know what happens if you sit for more than a half hour, your blood starts leaving your brain and going through your yard. Posterior, that's why everybody should just stand up for a second. One cookie, grab a cookie, and go back and sit down and take a look. Okay? Stretch a little bit. We've got brain flowing back up, blood flowing back up. What we're going to be doing is I've got some people around the room that are going to help me by collecting Post-it notes from you. We're going to be asking you to fill out your comments on the Post-it note, and then we're going to collect them, get them up here on the board so we make sure that every voice is heard. We're going to do that with about 3 questions, and then our last question, we're just going to have you talk with us a little bit, and I'm going to try to take meticulous notes up on the board so we make sure that we capture all the information that you want to share tonight, okay, regarding this important issue. All right? So, everybody should have some Post-its in front of them or somewhere on the table. There's markers and pencils and cookies and water and coffee and don't fill your coffee in the Post-it notes. Okay? All right, so let's start with an easy question. First question we're going to ask you. What are the strengths of this school, of this community, of this school district? Any one of those, what are the strengths? What do you like about it? What's working? What have you heard that's working? What are the strengths? Who's got a strength? Somebody write something down. Then hold it up, and we've got people around the room that are going to grab them for you. And I'm going to read them off as I give them to you. There's a couple, maybe. If you can read, yeah, you can use the blackboard. Bring them up, we'll read them off.
Great teachers.
Great teachers.
Neighborhood school, small size, staff.
Neighborhood school.
Staff.
Yeah,
I have teachers who know, love, and care for the students at Harrison. And I also have small student numbers.
It is the heart of the neighborhood.
Heart of the neighborhood. Good one.
Like the small school family, like
Small school, family-like atmosphere here at Harrison. Great.
community-based school, family atmosphere.
Again?
Community-based school.
Community-based school with family atmosphere. The staff and teachers.
Yeah, teachers again.
Oh, see, I like these with the markers, so I can actually. Come on, boy, see this gray hair, the eyes aren't working that great. You go with markers.
Quality education, small schools, small classrooms, dedicated staff.
Close-knit community school. This school small class numbers, dedicated staff, community-minded.
Okay?
I have
Community minded, great.
dedicated staff as well.
Strong elementary schools.
Wolf Schmidt Community School. Strong elementary school.
We got neighborhood schools.
Neighborhood schools are important. One thing we're looking for as we do this, we look for themes. So you're already starting to hear a theme coming through here? Yeah, great, keep it coming. It's okay to repeat things.
Staff know the students.
Great, strong principal.
Also have great parents, and that is the truth.
The staff know the students here.
Warm environment, friendly staff, committed families, children who soar to success.
Children who soar to success, I love it. Great group, keep it going, I want to fill this page at least. Come on, I need a few more. Who's got another one? Oh, come on, this is the stage right here. Come on, we gotta fill this page. Who's got one?
Ox Pride, you bet.
All right. Fox Pride. That's it? One more?
Neighborhood schools.
Neighborhood schools, man, good theme, important theme.
Strong school board.
Strong school board,
Family-like atmosphere for kids.
family like atmosphere, good. All right, next question. Who-
Strong staff.
Strong staff. Go ahead.
Generations of families go here.
Generations, wonderful.
This one says Harrison is very important to neighborhood kids.
Neighborhood schools build a better community.
We
All
got
right.
location, location, location.
That's good. What are some of the strengths? Anybody else have any more?
Very good. All right, next question. What are the challenges we're facing? And there's some things from the district perspective. What are the challenges we're facing? Now, there's some challenges as a school, there's some challenges as a community, in Brainerd, challenges in the district. What are the challenges we face? Let's get them all out there. Okay? All the challenges.
All right, we have small spaces and the cafeteria is too small.
I am going to be asking you, by the way, my next question is going to get more specific into some of those physical space needs. So let's try to think now more about the challenges, the big picture challenges of our communities, of our schools. We're gonna dig down into the physical needs, okay? But it's okay, you can bring them up, but just try to be thinking bigger picture right now.
This one says funding, and then we have library is too small, not enough classrooms, and space, the classroom size is a challenge.
Okay, and this has small spaces and security.
Too little space, poor air quality, socioeconomic diversity,
Tight space again.
crowded spaces,
Enrollment's a challenge. Enrollment is a challenge. You saw up there, we got more kids coming. Which is, by the way, folks, I'm working with a lot of districts. There's a lot of districts that dream to have a problem like this. Most districts around Minnesota, especially the rural districts, are shrinking, are losing kids, are trying to maintain the program. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to have growth.
ADA compliance,
Funding's a challenge. Age of the building is a challenge. Lack of space, again. High cost of transportation, no security.
I have no air conditioning, community financial challenges, and keeping the school in the neighborhood.
The library is too small, the physical space with growing needs. Too many kids in small-sized schools.
We got
Rick?
keep small school field while adding room, older building, small space, security, space. Too focused on the sports program, apply more focus to academics. Handicap accessibility,
Not handicap accessible.
Not handicap accessible. Finances is a challenge. Wide variety of needs need to be met in our schools. Playground needs help.
Some that I have here say special education needs, there are too many stairs for the wheelchairs. We have no computer lab, space for support staff, small or lack of classrooms, a small gym, lunchroom, and no air conditioning, and community representation.
Elevator needed. Gym too small. We have 2 classes in gym at the same time. Wow.
I got no parking, getting public support, sped numbers rising rapidly.
Keep them coming.
Getting vacationers to support our schools.
Getting vacationers to support our schools. Okay.
That's a big one in this area.
Big one? Okay. Great. What else? Keep them coming. We've already jumped into this whole thing about, think about the schools and 21st century learning, what kids are learning today, what need to be, how they're being taught. Think about this building built in 1939 and what teaching and learning was like in 1939. Do you think of any more challenges that we're facing? Keep them coming. We want to collect them all.
This one says an elevator, we do not meet ADA.
Okay? Elevator.
We need more special education staff.
More special ed staff. Okay? More
Funds
comments?
to build capacity for special/alternative education methods.
Build capacity for special alternative education methods.
Technology needs.
Technology.
This one is the same, rapidly changing technology.
We have no student spaces for students to meet.
Okay? We commonly call it breakout spaces for kids. Just sitting in hallways doesn't work. A music room is very small. Any more?
It's
Good, keep them coming.
landlocked.
We're landlocked. Good point. Oh, here's a good one. Is there an accurate understanding of what is going to be needed to educate our children 15 years from now? Okay? When they built this building in 1939, they had no idea where we're going to be today. What's it going to be like 15 years from now? How are we going to be educated? Great question. Okay?
This says one of the challenges is that the students have to share lockers.
This Harrison has no sick room.
Oh, here's another. We are teaching environmental sustainability and throwing lunch trays away in schools where we don't have facilities to wash them. Okay? Because of the size of the cafeteria and stuff, we can't be environmentally friendly. Okay? Great. Any more?
This one says we need full-time nursing staff.
Full-time nursing staff.
Programs for parents are super crowded.
Programs for parents are super crowded. Pretty good. Okay, I want to, we're kind of, this group is, we're kind of did the opposite of, because I want you to think now, you've done a wonderful job of talking about the challenges in this building. Tell me about the challenges that Brainerd is facing, challenges that families are facing, challenges that kids are facing today. Tell me about those kinds of challenges. Are there any challenges, or is everything just perfect in Brainerd? Is this like what we got? Okay. Tell me about the challenges in our community. What are they? I get paid a penny a postage, so keep it coming. What are the challenges that our communities face?
Unemployment.
Unemployment. Okay?
Aging community and more conservative.
Aging community, more conservative?
These say poverty and single-parent families that are trying to make a go at life.
Okay? Single parent families. All right?
We have lack of money, low minimum wage jobs, getting parents involved with schools.
Family disconnect. Financial issues for a lot of families.
Working parents can't make enough money.
Working parents can't make enough money.
Increase in free and reduced.
All right, free and reduced lunch, populations increased, what do they understand, free and reduced lunch, it's a federal poverty level. Enough for kids, if families aren't making enough money, the kids can get extra help at school. Just community support is a challenge.
A couple other that I have here are city and school district disinvestment, generational poverty, and drugs.
Low income, high taxes, seniors having trouble financially, single family head of household, lack of transportation, low income families, and one of the highest levels of poverty in the state. Jobs, lack of good paying jobs, no industry.
This one says priorities of sports versus academics.
Parents don't have time to invest in kids' education, mental health issues, assistance program is broken. Busing, lunch times and breakfast, job market, tourist town, food, free lunch. Lots of kids on free reduced lunch equals high poverty. Keeping up with technology and security needs, low wages.
Mental health and substance abuse, low incomes, no sidewalks because we're not a walkable community. Okay?
Fear
Fear.
of the unknown, political and financial.
Medical insurance.
I have past issues with referendums, uneducated parents, and seasonal unstable work.
I hate to be Debbie Downer, but it's important for us to talk about these things. It's important for us to understand that there is a relationship between all of this. Okay? You can't just talk about needs in the school without talking about needs in the community. It's important to get all this out on the table.
Fixed income households and community perception.
Okay? Good. Any more?
Lack of a strong middle class, and providing year-round safe places for neighborhood kids.
Wonderful. Great. Any more? What over here?
Mental and social health issues with children in class.
Okay. Mental health issues in our schools. Okay. Really something we didn't think about when this building was built, mental health issues in schools. Okay. Any more? Okay. Last one. This is a question, we're just going to have a little kind of roundtable discussion, and I'm going to write what I'm asking you to do is we have some board members here, administration here. I'm going to write down your thoughts, but what we want you to do is to tell us in a short phrase your words of advice moving this process forward. If we want to be successful doing something for community, we don't know what it is yet. Lane said that. We got some ideas, we got needs out there, but if we're going to be successful as a community, moving our schools forward into the 21st century, what are your words of advice to make this a successful process? What are those things the leadership needs to keep in mind? Again, we're gathering all this data so that they can be reminded of this as this process moves forward. What are your words of advice? I'm going to turn this over. Mike, do you want to hold mic? And
Sure.
people
This
can.
can even be, you know, if you want to talk just about Harrison, what would be your recommendation that you would give the decision makers of the district regarding Harrison?
You don't have to write this down, you can just shout it out or raise your hand.
You want to write it out in there?
Yeah.
I get inundated with the fact that I think people are now at the point where they know to refurbish this building is no longer an option, but they want the building in this neighborhood. That's a challenge. How do we do that? I would bet a minimum of one day. We get it. We need not a mega school. That's another fear that people have here. But we really want to keep the neighborhood.
Bells.
Did everybody hear that, what she said?
I have down, keep this building in the neighborhood, keep the building in this neighborhood. That captured? Okay. What else you got from the
Did
side?
you want not a mega school to heard you
Yeah,
say
they're
that?
really afraid that we just talked about it from the tables tonight. Because we are such a family-oriented building, it's small, people know each other, we know aunts, uncles, grandparents, it's unbelievable. They don't want that climate, that emphasis change, and as you get to be a mega school, that becomes harder. So 500 or less would be what we talk about. People can live with the four sections. And it's not that they're opposed, they're just afraid that we're gonna lose, that we know our children's names. We know when somebody doesn't look happy or healthy, and that may sound very trivial, but when you're little, it's not. And that's how we build trust. And if they trust and feel safe here, they're gonna learn. And that's what we work on. The staff here are incredible because they can recognize different idiosyncrasies in our children that might go, yeah, I mean, and that go unseen in other places, because we know our kids.
Okay, what else? Yes, sir.
The decisions are made based on the student learner of today and the student learners in 15 to 20 years.
Very good.
There's a socioeconomic group that doesn't always get heard. And I think in part because they're probably working right now or working two jobs to try to make things work. It's just that we don't make decisions without considering what we want our community to look like in the future as a whole. Did you get that? I know it was a little bit.
Help me.
We need to make sure that we have impoverished people in our community. And we need, as when we're looking at our long-term goals, I think we need to be considering how we can get out of some of these cycles of poverty. And one of the things I think we do well in Harrison is we make kids who come from families who are struggling feel safe, feel accepted. And because of that, like Mrs. Mount said, they're ready to learn. They're willing to learn. They're willing to do their best because they love their teachers and they love the school.
Make decisions that can help families get out of this cycle of poverty.
I heard you both say trust. I think that that's important. Build trust.
Go ahead.
So, again, on the trust statement, except a little different take on it. Going back a few years ago when the referendum did not pass, my advice would be find out who your biggest critics are going to be, pick one or two of them, and find a way to get them on board. You don't need to win everybody, but you got to win one or two of your biggest critics.
I would go farther than keeping the building in the neighborhood. I think we should keep the school in the neighborhood. And I think this block is the location for the young elementary school in southeast Brainerd. And it is a challenge being landlocked, but I do know that we can work with the city to get some streets vacated next to the school to expand space land. We could look towards 15th, 16th Street, and that's doable.
So build on site.
This location, yes.
And
15th,
expand.
and if we need more space, we gotta build more classrooms, let's do it, but let's do it at 15th and Old Street.
Vacate street, you said?
It's a possibility, it's not.
If
Well, I think it is important to keep those still, it may not be necessary to tear it down, it may be that remodeling, that you can look at options and alternatives and look at waivers for certain things. I think Thursday is very integral part of this community. We are ashamed of this. I think all the things people said about being family oriented, it is so true, and it's so true. And it is far more important than the galaxy whistles that are some of the things that you're talking about. And you ask for advice, my advice would be to be honest with us about options and alternatives. In my experience, that when you ask for that, sometimes the options you really have been very good. So none of them are very good. Let's be honest and give people all of the options and alternatives that are out there for you. And relative to considering the future, I know none of us can do it, but I think that we should struggle with this, that perhaps a great deal of education will be online in less than 3 years. And as we build these Taj Mahals, it will be outside. And so I think we need to consider that technology is moving faster than any of us can do. And there may be many more opportunities for online and that sort of thing than buildings and buildings with.
So I'd like to think back on Mary's comments, though, and the buildings that we obsolete are the edge of town, cement buildings built in a sea of parking. When the learning goes online and when more people are learning through different avenues, the community schools will still be important buildings in their neighborhoods.
Okay, I want to make sure I got three things marked right here. Community school is more important than building this. That's the first thing I heard. I also heard, be honest in the options. And I also heard consider technology in the future and online learning. Okay, does that capture what you were saying?
She also talked about online learning though, to make sure that it's.
I got online learning. Okay.
If we do, would add, if we did add on to part of the school or build new to make the structure sound enough that we could always add on up the base structure, so it'd be strong enough to do that in the future, so we didn't have to go farther out to space, but we could go up and make that structure sound enough.
And so if we add on, consider build up. Okay. Okay.
My suggestion would be to
No,
ask,
he was
ask-
37.
my suggestion would be to ask the kids what they like and like what they need.
We have gone through a process. We work with the high school kids a lot, talking about, and we ask them about, think about your younger siblings, you know, mainly because we'd like to think high school seniors have a little more together, but it's not a bad idea to ask the little ones to.
Yeah.
My third graders heard.
Yeah, my third graders had plenty to say about this whole process.
I'm an old elementary principal, I know. Okay? Ask the kids what they like and need.
Transportation and busing for kids. We live southeast of town, my daughter
and walking. Now, is this still a mile in the city?
Okay. Okay. Keep coming, yeah.
For some of those of you who weren't here for the ones that happened in years past, part of this that you may or may not understand is the trust that lady was talking about before is a huge thing, because there's a lot of people in this community that are of the older generation that were not treated very fairly, and there was no transparency in the process the last few times it's happened. And those are the people that are going to make a difference. Without those people, this referendum will never pass.
So we're not starting at neutral, we're starting at.
Right. You're starting in the middle. That, I think, is going to be a very big struggle.
How do we build that?
That's a good question. Because those people aren't sitting in this room, and they haven't been in any of these other rooms that we've been in. Because they don't trust the process at all. And I don't know how you get them here.
I think based on what he made, that the plan that came out to tear down building, rebuilding, and build two new ones and add on, it's gonna be a hard sell in this community to do all that. I guess I think people are just not gonna buy, tearing down Harrison, tearing down, Bell Catholic, and tearing down LEC, and building two new elementary schools. And I feel like it's too big of a plan to sell, it would have to be done in much smaller numbers. And I haven't heard anybody in the community that would support that big of a plan right after that.
Well, can I say community support won't support too big of a plan?
I don't see that right now. That's fair. Yeah, I think if it was done in tiers maybe, or a smaller house, maybe if it's built an elementary school to help the county, they might build one elementary school. But I think if you come out of tearing down a building and building new all at the same time, it's not gonna help.
And I don't know how much hasn't been invested here, but I think the school's been sort of neglected. So when you look at the cost in terms of what needs to be done here, I don't know that you can really consider how much hasn't been done over the last 10 years, because this school's sort of been on the chopping block for the last 10 years. If that makes sense.
Manufacturing problem.
Can you elaborate on that? I think you're right. Can you elaborate on that?
Consider the whole school, and it wasn't clear about it, it's not just Riverside or Lowell, Lowell's got the agri program, but what is theirs? We have all partners in the neighborhood. And they deserve just as right as anybody else.
Yeah, the idea of tearing down Harrison as a manufacturer, a long time coming, is continually don't invest, don't invest, don't invest, and then show up one day and say, oh man, your school needs to be torn down now because it hasn't had money invested in it. And it's not the people who live here who didn't invest in it, they all pay their taxes.
The bigger issue too is that you're sending a message to the kids that don't hear that their school is good. I mean, you're creating a problem for the children that that's not being addressed.
I think one of the things Jennifer spoke about trust. When the school district told the people that the Franklin school could not be used for school services any longer. And yet it's used today as an art center, it's a wonderful new part of the city, very valuable. And the question is still out there. How could it have been refurbished so beautifully for that public purpose, which Franklin Art Center is? But oh no, we couldn't do it for school. That's still got a lot of people mad. And many people are not listening to the course it's true. They don't like the course. You know, it's overbuilt. It doesn't serve our business. And has many, many problems. And so when we talk about trust, that's why I continue on options and alternatives and honesties, not just the one you want us to hear that maybe even wonderful. And did they have all the fruits and all the things that we talk about? They know they did not. What did they have? Dear friends, that in some cases, my children are still friends today with the friends they made at Lincoln School. We had active parent-teacher associations. We had sloppy Joe suppers. We had all kinds of fun things that we invited to the Elijah Church of parents and children came to and used the gym, and there was laughter, talking, and discussion, and fun. So don't lose them. Don't lose them. That's what we really,
You gotta come to this house. Okay, three things I wrote down from this discussion. School has been on a chopping block. Nobody cared. The lack of investment has led to this. Okay. Past decisions to repurpose old buildings, not as schools, and forestry have created a lack of trust. Okay. And friendships and relationships were built in old schools. Don't lose those neighborhoods and those things. Okay.
Here, we have another comment right here.
Yeah.
I also agree that I think forestry was way blown out of proportion. I think there's a lot of wasted money on that school that could have been purposed better. I feel like we, as much as we treasure our past and small neighborhood feel, and we want to keep that definitely, we can't compare where we're going with how we had in the past and still strive to attain that because it's just not realistic. It's not going to happen where the culture is going today. Also, as a parent of an autistic child, I very, very much value small classrooms, individualized attention, alternative learning methods, a lot of interaction outside, not sitting and staring at a teacher or screen all the time. It's, the only reason that I chose to bring my child to the Brainerd School District versus like the Cross Lake Charter School or Montessori was because of Harrison's small class numbers and because it had a family feel that I wanted my child to have. It's not going to go away. I would definitely use it.
Can't compare where we are going with what was happening in the past. We want the family feel and small classes.
Yeah, no big fancy work.
I guess my 2 cents when it comes to trust, which I believe is essential to the process. And I definitely, it's important to hear what those have talked about in the past. I've been here since 2020. I guess wasn't up to speed on what happened, past referendums and that type of thing. But when it comes to trust and throwing that on the table, I think it's important to unpack that a bit, maybe not tonight, but at some point to define what that means. And I guess to unpack my comment a little bit is, are we viewing trust through the lens of what we want, or are we viewing trust through the lens of what we need? And I think that really needs to be defined.
Okay, this is how I captured that. Again, I try to then define trust, unpack it as what we want versus what we need. You gotta unpack it and look at the needs and wants as a community.
Well, not just that, but I think depending on who you talk to in this room, we may be looking at trust and whether it's been lost or gained through the lens of what we want versus what we need. And I'm definitely not saying what's wanting or what's needed, but I think we really need to unpack that because I think we might that trust with either one party or the other. But I think there's some middle ground to be gained there, but we need to define that a little bit more.
Charles, I'm not quite sure that's the issue, because with the last referendum and how that went, there wasn't the transparency within the community, there wasn't the communication to the community. So I'm not really sure that it was need versus want, I think it was communication. And feeling like people had voice in the process. I could be wrong, but that's my impression of the process, and I was here during that process.
It could be, and probably so. But I think that there's, just the reality is there's a lot of value placed on where we need to be 15 years from now, but also, which also is okay, and I grew up in a small town, but there's also a lot of value being placed on nostalgia as well, which equally is okay. But I think that defines a want and a need much differently depending on how it's defined.
And I guess the other thing I would say to that is it might sound a bit like nostalgia, but I've looked at some statistics, and they say that for impoverished schools, the size of an elementary at about 300 to 400 is ideal for those kids to thrive. And that it doesn't matter so much in a middle income or high income community, but with impoverished kids, school size is a big indicator of success. So I know it might sound like nostalgia, but I think it's more than that.
I'd like to add something to your statement. I think that if we looked at how our students are doing with the class sizes that we have now, and with the staff ratio that we have now, and in the setting that we have now, I think that we'd stand up really well to that scrutiny. And that the things that parents and the staff and the community find so important here, it's because the children are responding very well to it. They are really doing well in this environment, and that's why people don't want this environment to change.
I can go through that. I have two children that have been staying here for back to my bigger schools prior to coming to the conference. Those two roamed here for half a year, and they had already reached the goal that they needed to go to their class. So a smaller school, absolutely. Trust, faith, family, friends. That's what hers and theirs. And that's where my kids are.
School size, class size, school environment, we're working here.
It's working, and honestly, I think if we looked at test scores, if we looked at how well children were doing from kindergarten through fourth, I think that scientifically, research would support that this is working for the kids. I think that if we just took the full hard facts, they would, in the education, they would be in our favor. We're gonna have you repeat.
What you said, so we're sure he gets it. Because I don't think he got it on the water. I'm so sorry.
When we moved here, my kids were behind in their class. Because of the staff and the teachers working with them, and half the year they were where they needed to be for their class. For themselves, yeah. And they still are.
Heard you say family, friends, and
Faith.
too. Three F's.
And not only that, they come home and they talk about their day. So that's just a lot to your school. Your kids are coming home and they're talking about their day and it's great. Doing something.
All right, put down, consider the success of the kids in this school.
Absolutely.
Okay? And look at the scientific research on the school, on this school's success. Okay?
So I just have a couple of thoughts. We moved to Harrison School after we had been at Lowell for the first child's entire elementary, and we moved partway through because of a move in the community. So we came from one school and came to Harrison, and it was vastly
about what's at each of our schools so that they're not so vastly different going from one side of town to the other side of town. Because I'm not gonna lie, it was a big adjustment for my second grader when he came here. We struggled. The teachers got him through coming here, but he was at a loss because he lost a lot of things coming to a different school. That piggybacks into the second thought. We have to think about, there's been a lot of conversation about poverty and all this other kind of stuff. We have to think about those that aren't that way though either. We have to look at, we can't just focus on that group because then that holds back the rest that might not be in that group, or the families that are struggling to get involved, because there are a lot of really involved families in this school that work really hard for their students. And I don't want our focus to solely be on the families that don't have that. Even though it breaks my heart that there's parents that don't do that. But we do, some of us do. And we need to think about that. It needs to be included in the plan. That there's varying degrees of families at one school.
But I think she has a point that we hear at our PTO meetings and at our math meetings for parents, is when they visit other schools in our district, what Harrison doesn't have compared to the other ones.
Yes.
And I think that's a point that I think people are nervous to bring up, but I think it begs to be tried. Because this is an opportunity for us to kind of make the playing field the same. I would venture to say Harrison got, but that would go against what I just said. We need to do that, and I think I've heard Harrison referred to as a stepchild, and I want that displaced. I want it gone. So I think you're right. I think that has to go.
It's significant when you bring students from other schools here and see the difference in what happens at other schools. And I am so grateful for every staff that we've encountered because they have made my children's experience. That has been, it's been the staff, the teachers, everybody that's made it. But there's significant differences in the same district.
Okay, I captured three things from what you said. Schools should not differ so much across the district. Look at needs of kids from all backgrounds and abilities, and look at equity of resources between schools. That capture that?
I think that goes back to even when they're saying like all the things that this building has needed in the past how many years and they haven't done anything for this building as far as upkeep and that kind of thing. And I think it's also happened with our technology needs. We have 6 iPads for each kindergarten class that we're supposed to be using, and how many other schools have classroom full. And just, our gym size and the amount of kids we have in it, it's not just the building that's been neglected, but it's been a lot of things that we need to.
Technology, size.
Well, for example, we are the only building in ISD 181 without air quality air conditioning. That is awful. And years ago, with the previous superintendent, I addressed that issue with him when we were talking about it, he was very school. And he said, you'll never get it here. And that's what really our staff, we've known a lot, we can't get the things we need to improve our school, which is why, as because we have so many needs now. It's not that our school would have higher needs if we had any improvements over the last 27 years, but we had only what they had to do. If we had a lot of needs, they could, we haven't had any money really poured into doing this building.
Anything else?
Yeah. I heard a lot of anti-towards being sent to them. And one thing you have to realize, bigger buildings do have a lot more efficiencies. The cost for students is a lot less. I can't say I'm for or against it, but you just have to remember with smaller buildings, what was going to have to support? They're going to cost more.
The only other thing I would say is we really can't afford to build our building. We can't afford to kick this down
or going in reverse order. New 500 student building on site. Small schools cost more, can't afford another failed referendum. Bigger buildings have more efficiency.
Who said new 500 student building on site?
That's what,
I sit around with 500 students.
Which is add on, to not necessarily the entire new building.
I would say
Either.
or.
So,
You have to realize 500 students is almost doubling what we are right now. Right now, we're at 280. If you put 500 students, you're doubling the size of Harrison. Just be aware that we're talking 500.
I would say just to expand on the trust and the transparency of this process. At first, there were two options for here. Add on, remodel, to go for current, or destruct and rebuild. That first option, that's apparently not the building, quote unquote. If that truly, if it's truly more expensive to add on to the school than it is to build a new one for us, I say we need to show voters the numbers, that's how we gain the trust.
the only option is to build new.
We need to show the voters that
Prove
it truly is more
to
expensive to add on.
voters.
Because it's apparent, everybody loves this building.
This is aimed at the dispatch, who I love, because I love to be in the paper. But one of the problems that we had was when the article was written, unbeknownst to us, that our building was going to be torn down, I had to do triage. I had to hold a whole school meeting with the kids, I had to reassure them, I had to build that trust again, because we had kids crying, we had kids beside themselves that their building was going to be torn down tomorrow. So whatever we do, to please spin the positive and not talk about Harrison being torn down, because it affects our kids a lot. This, for many of our kids, this is a safe place, this is where they trust us again, and I don't want to have to go through that again and try to build that trust and say to them, are you sure? You know, why would the paper write that if it wasn't true? I mean, it was a long process. We can't do that again. We can't talk about what's going to happen to the rest of it.
Okay, so, did I capture what you, if the only option is to build new, prove to the voters it is necessary by cost, analysis, facts, need the data. Let's keep it positive for the kids. Not get them in the phrase. Okay. All right? Yes? Two. All right.
First, do you as a group have a contingency plan if the referendum does not pass?
Okay.
Second, I work in construction. I work in all these new schools, remodeled schools, all over the state of Minnesota, all the time, every year. I have worked in plenty of them. They built a brand new school, and they forgot to tell the public that they were gonna have to put books and computers and desks and all that stuff in there. And those schools sit empty for 2 years before they're ever used. It happens, and it happens more than you think.
It's called FF&E for your term out, it's furniture, fixtures, and equipment. If you can turn the building upside down and shake it, what falls out? All the desks and tables. You need to plan for that, okay?
we find some lockers. Franklin's got a bunch when we left there.
Great, great concept. And you're right, there's one place with a cut for your healthy budget, cut the other. This has really been a great discussion. Thank you so much for your comment. I can't tell you last night meeting that we had 4 pages of, in a long time, I don't think I've ever had 4, but I can do this. Thank you. All of this information now will be, the spelling can be corrected by someone. And then this will all be posted on the website, so you'll be able to see, and you can look at what your comments are, what the comments were made last night at Riverside, what the comments will be made next week. All of this will be documented. We're also going to look at trends. Obviously, we saw some trends here tonight, right? And the board members are here listening. This information will go to them, and they'll get this information to help them make good decisions. Yes, sir.
I just really feel it's important to share. One of the reasons I came here tonight, I don't live in this particular area, but probably one of my biggest concerns with this whole process is how the school district is going to access the voice of those in this particular area of the Brainerd community. And I just throwing it out there as a parking lot comment, that is there a way that due to size, but also due to some of the population in this particular area of the community, is there a way that the voice that you're hearing, or is there a way we could dig a little deeper with individuals in this community? Or is there a way that we can magnify this voice before the board or the powers that be the sentiment of this group? Because I'm really concerned whether or not this group is going to be heard loudly as to when you get to further outside the community, and some of the voices you're going to hear loudly through there.
That is one of our biggest challenges, so that is something we're really, really working on trying to more effectively is hear the voices of those that are never heard. Because you're right. Those are the kids are the primary people we're concerned about in these schools. We can make sure those kids succeed. Where we started, right? It's all about the kids. We got to get those voices out. We're working on that. We're going to continue to work on that, and we're open to suggestions from anybody, especially groups. If you know a group that meets on a regular basis and they're looking for speakers, or a bunch of guys that give the others a coffee every Tuesday morning, you can go out and sit down with them and talk. If you know about those kinds of groups, please let us know. We'd love to reach out to them.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'd like to add to that. We're meeting at the 9 buildings right now out of the 12, and we've got a list of all the civic organizations throughout the community. The Chamber of Commerce is going to be holding some meetings with the business community to have us come and speak with them. We hope to just kind of inundate the community to hear from people and to get their opinions. And then when we collect all the information, it's our intent to go back out again to talk about what is some of the information that we're hearing. What are we hearing from the public as we go out? And we want to continue to hear throughout this entire process. Because, like I said earlier, this really needs to be a community partnership focused on education. Because if we're going to make this happen, we have to do it together. And so any suggestions that you have for helping us to get out, get the word out, to hear from the public and to share your sentiments and hear other people's sentiments, we want to do that. And so I appreciate you bringing up that point and very much.
I'm smiling, Amy, that reminded me that we did a session in the community north of you, and we were told about go out to this community center and we're going to meet with the people out there. So we went out into the middle of nowhere. The community center was actually the bar. They were all sitting with the bar stools, and I'm doing my little session, and all of a sudden the guys were coming over from the bar, and I thought, I don't know how this is going to go, but it actually ended up being a wonderful session. So We've done this in many, many different environments. And
Barnes and Page a few blocks away, so there we go. Those are the people I was talking about earlier that feel betrayed from before.
And it's going to be, the more that all of us have a dialogue within our community, it's very, very important. I'm some Yahoo from the outside. If you're their neighbors and friends, we all need to discuss this. There are no answers right now, but we sure have a lot of questions, and we have to get all of the questions and the data on the table to have this discussion. Okay? Thank you so much. Wonderful job.
Yeah, personally, thank all of you for taking the time to be here, make a difference, and I so appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to add to that too, on behalf of the board. I know that everybody just really appreciates your time and all of the conversation that you've given us tonight. So we look forward to working together through this process. So thank you so much for coming out and have a wonderful day.
And because we're